So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At the very outset, on behalf of Jaipuria Institute of Management, all four campuses, Lucknow, Noida, Jaipur, and Indore, I welcome each one of you in the second episode of the Change Maker series. After a very engaging and brainstorming session with Sri Aditya Ghosh, former President Indigo, today we have with us a thought leader, a change maker, and yet very humble human being, a legendary figure, Dr. Yogi Sriram. It is a matter of immense pleasure and privilege for me to welcome Dr. Yogi. Sir, I welcome you to Jaipuria Institute of Management's leadership webinar in the Change Maker series.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to take a few moments and introduce Dr. Yogi Sriram to all of you, though he does not need any formal introduction. Dr. Yogi Sriram is advisor to CEO and MD, Group Human Resources Larsen Toubro, popularly known as L&T. Yogi is a self-driven and focused HR leader with 43 years of experience in multiple HR functions across diverse industries, right from manufacturing, hospitality, finance, FMCG, engineering, petroleum, and construction. With a proven expertise in the area of talent spotting, succession planning, organization development, talent management, and change management. He is one of the longest serving HR leaders in the country today. He has been instrumental in shaping the HR function for various business entities, including Sriram Group, earlier called DCM, NTPC, Bovary Limited, Dabur, Taj Group, and L&T Group, to name a few. You'll be very happy to know that Dr. Yogi Sriram is also on Jaipuria's Board of Governors and constantly guiding us in shaping management education for our students and other stakeholders. Dr. Yogi Sriram is a well-respected name, not only in the corporate world, but also in the management space and academic circle. He has made profound and immense contribution to the body of knowledge and practices in management. His principles, ethics, and an outstanding oratory makes him a brilliant speaker and an impactful thought leader. Educated from Sriram College, Delhi for BA Honours degree in Economics, the prestigious Tata Institute of Social Sciences for Masters in Personnel Management and Industrial Relations, MBA in Organizational Behavior from FMS Delhi, LLB from University of Delhi, and PhD from University of Engineering Management, Kolkata. Indeed, Dr. Yogi Sriram has an amazing career and education. However, what makes him unique is his diverse interest, creative pursuits, and his relentless search for meaning and aesthetic life. He is fascinated about reading and applying learning from behavioral science and social psychology experiments. He likes traveling and exploring culture through cuisines. His wildlife photography of birds in motion and shy mammals will leave you speechless. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're thinking that Yogi Sriram thrives mostly on his creative right brain, here is one of his unique hobby for your information. Yogi collects HO and OO scale model trains, enjoys conversion of analog trains into digital trains. He loves experimenting, particularly with electronics for model trains. Would you believe it if I say that he has a prototype of a complete train system in his house? I was not believing it unless I saw it myself. I'm sure he's going to talk and show you a bit about this today. In today's talk, Dr. Yogi Sriram will be speaking and responding to your queries on the subject, leading people in a normal life. Please feel free to post your question in the chat. This is your opportunity to hear from the maestro and a champion on leadership. In his 2018 paper on leadership, he writes, and I quote, "Leadership is like a contemporary software with upgrades. It is ever evolving," unquote. In the same paper, he further writes, and I quote again, "Leadership excellence is a journey without an end, but beginning with the end in mind is important," unquote. I'm sure he will elaborate further on these statements and his address, and the pressing questions that is there at the back of all our minds. He is going to address that as well. The pressing question is how to become an effective leader in the midst of chaos and crisis, which is the deep need of the hour. Ladies and gentlemen, I call upon the speaker of the day, Dr. Yogi Sriram, for his initial thoughts. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Prabhat Pankaj. Absolutely delighted to be with the students and faculty of Jaipuria Institute of Management. I believe you have all your 4 campuses, students from all 4 campuses, faculty from all 4 campuses who logged in. Absolutely delighted to be here. And ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to you. I hope you can see the screen and also see my face in a small little window, because I'm going to be showing some slides so that I can just high point some of the issues that I'm going to raise and some of the points I wish to make. Can you please confirm, Dr. Prabhat? Can you see the screen clearly and can you see me?
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible.
But you're searching for me.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, good. So basically, what I'm going to speak about this afternoon is on the topic of leading people in a new normal. And this is a very interesting topic, because we need to discover together, first of all, what does leading people mean? What is the new normal? What are the new behaviors? So I have broken up the entire presentation into 3 broad sections. One is business, because it's important for all the younger colleagues and also the faculty here to be resonating with my thoughts, or I must resonate with their thoughts in terms of what is the current business scenario, because the current business scenario is an absolute change from what it was just a few months back. Second is, as a result of the current business scenario, what are the norms? What are the norms, new norms that we're talking about? What is the new way of leading people in corporates? And I will, along with all of you, look into a crystal ball to see about how are people behaviors going to change, how are work settings going to change, what are the new expectations, etc., of people in the future. Now, I did hear a little bit about what Mr. Aditya Ghosh had spoken about during the last session, and therefore what you see on the screen on your left-hand side of the screen is my company, Larsen Toubro, which I gratefully represent. And on the right-hand side, I'm holding an Indigo plane, and that is because I had the privilege of being invited by Mr. Aditya Ghosh to address his senior management team some years back. And while I didn't even realize, they made this little cartoon of myself along with the Indigo flight. So the idea is to segue also from the points he was making into this particular webinar, so that there's also some continuity. In terms of the business perspectives, you will find that the slides are a little content heavy. So please forgive me if they're very content heavy, because one has taken pains to put together a lot of statistics. I know that statistics in the middle of the afternoon of a Saturday are difficult to digest, but these are very, very important because they are bellwethers for the future, and they're also trends for the future. So the first slide is about key macro indicators India and the forecasts for FY21, and what is the kind of a future that we are going to face. So FY21, the GDP growth is being revised down, and as you see, the India FY21 GDP year-on-year growth forecast in the pre-COVID era, which was in 2019, the growth was supposed to be 5.2 to 6%, and then it was scaled down on 31st March to 2.1% to 3.5%, and then on 17th of April, it was scaled down further to 0% to 2.5%. The lockdown, if you all remember, started, I think, around 25th of March. And 16th of May, it was scaled down to minus 5.2% to anywhere to minus 0.4%. And now, as we speak, we are today on somewhere in 9th or 10th of July, and we are 7% to 3.7%. So if you look at the entire scenario, it's a little bleak, but I don't think we should run away from it. I think we should take it head on and understand what it is. So the GDP growth for Q4 is 3.1%, and FY20 was 4.2%. Q4 is the quarter that went by. We have now entered the end of, or the beginning of Q2. So the Q4 is the quarter that went by in the last fiscal of 1920. The SBI research experts talk about a minus 40% GDP growth in Q1. Private consumption is 60% of GDP. That means it has fallen drastically. The growth is 2.7% in FY20 versus 6.2% in FY19. And what they call is gross fixed capital formation, GFCF. That means the acquisition of produced assets like cars, like earth moving equipment and all that stuff, it was at 26% in Q4, the lowest number in the new series of 2012. So if you look at the economy and demand side, the manufacturing in June, what is called as the Purchase Managers Index. Please remember, if the Purchase Managers Index is less than or equal to 50, it means contraction of the economy. If it is more than 50%, it means that the economy is growing. So here you see it's up to 47.2. May was 30.8, which means it's very, very low. It means definitely the economy is contracting. Passenger car sales was 50% year on year in June 20. Rural sector leading recovery in autos, tractor sales, banks having sanctioned rupees 1 lakh crores till now to MSMEs under credit guarantee scheme, and banking sector reduced lending to MSMEs for personal loans, etc. I won't go through everything, but all I want to say is if you look at economy, demand, global linkages, and if you look at the government finances, there have been a lot of efforts to try and revive the economy. There have been a lot of linkages to global exports. For example, the Federation of Indian Export Organization expects a 10 to 12% decline in exports for FY21 because of port traffic year to day at major ports down to 22% year on year, and remittances to India likely to drop by 23% to $64 billion in 2020 versus 83 billion in 2019, which is what the World Bank estimates. So overall, if you see the slide, which has been quite painstakingly made with a lot of economics and a lot of figures and statistics, it shows a scenario which is entirely different from what it was just a few months ago. I think it's also important to look at what the impact has been in terms of new segments and new sales models. The topic is today, what is the new norm? So it's also important to know that many companies have treated this as a kind of an opportunity, though this must be one of the darkest moments in the last about many years in this planet. Many companies have actually been quite innovative and they tried to do new things during this time. So if you look at low-cost ventilators, if you look at costless thermal screens, antiviral fabric, protective cover clothing, medical devices, cabs for e-commerce delivery, air purifying respirators, booking for COVID-19 tests, hand sanitizers, vegetable cleaning liquid also by an FMCG, surface sanitizers, masks, PPEs, logistics, telemedicine, labor marketplace, quarantine cabins, live online tutoring. It's been a great time also for the education industry, tickets for virtual theaters, live video, pre-recorded video. So one of the questions I'm sure that will come up in this discussion is, where are the job opportunities in the next few months, few days, few weeks, and so on? These are the areas, ladies and gentlemen, which are really flourishing, including pharmaceutical, FMCG, e-commerce. These are the areas where people are experimenting. These are the companies that have been experimenting with new things. And I guess these are the sectors where you'll find new job opportunities and so on. So if you look at fitness companies, they have started doing online kind of trainings, use of digital platforms for selling real estate, We too are in the real estate development area. Direct delivery to consumers through Swiggy and Zomato, direct fulfillment of retailers. So the e-commerce industry is doing extremely well. And if you see even the auto industry, they're trying their best to give free trials to consumers by maintaining extremely high standards of hygiene and so on. This is a very interesting slide, which I request you to go through with a little bit of care. What it shows is, let me just move the bars around because I'm seeing lots of bars. So what you see on the x-axis is the countries. And you will notice that a large part of also what is exported by the country is also the imported component from a country which has been exceptionally hostile in the recent past. So China actually is one of the top countries which adds value to the exports that we do. That means whatever we import from China is then packed into the exports that we send out of the country. And we, of course, as you can see, are pretty low in terms of the percentage of GDP of the value of exports that we do. But still, it's a large component. And why I'm showing you this is because it's very important as young MBA students to understand the economic environment of business, the dynamics of imports, the dynamics of exports, the balance of payments, and so on. It's very important to inculcate the habit of going through magazines like Economist and newspapers like Mint or whatever it is, so that you are absolutely on top of trends. And as you see in this donut graph, India depends most on Chinese imports for producing its own exports. It's a large component which comes from China, of course, followed by Germany and so on. Many other countries too are importing from China, and many other countries too depend on imports, including Germany and so on. So you see here what is stacked up in the red bar is the amount of export. Now Germany is a juggernaut in terms of the manufacturing sector, and it has almost 38% after Vietnam, which is close to 100% of its GDP comes from exports. But Germany is also very substantial, and as you know, they are the home for BMW and so on. So this is important for us to note. And I also want to share with you that there have been a lot of sanctions and a lot of restrictions on trading with China. And as you see here, the restrictions have actually grown, while the restrictions have actually been much more relaxed for India. So this is a great time and a great opportunity, not a time to be only bogged down by the second, third slide, which I showed, which showed a bit of a bleak scenario. But this is a great time for India to stand up and get into manufacturing sector, focus on things like quality in a big way, and a great time for you guys to look for jobs in those sectors, which means that you need to think of rolling up your sleeves and not just getting tempted by this slide, which celebrates the tech giants. Now, I know that the tech giants are doing extremely well. Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Facebook, Apple, all these have added humongous amounts of revenues to their books during this pandemic. I'm sure in times to come also the digital companies will do extremely well because IoT, big data, analytics, all these are going to be very important fields. But I think the world is also looking at India for the manufacturing sector, for the project management sector, which is where my company, both these sectors where my company Larsen Toubro does a lot of work, particularly in the project management sector. So the first point I wish to communicate is, please get out of old stereotypes that the best place that your seniors felt was to join was FMCG or IT sector or whatever. There are other sectors too which are blossoming and which have huge prospects, which are especially the project management sector, the EPC sector, and the manufacturing sector. Retail is now going through a bit of a bad time in the world. I know that Jaipuria does offer an MBA with retail as a specialization. It is very, very challenging times for retail. And you see here listed the number of companies that have gone belly up. You see here Papyrus, you see here SFP, Franchise Corporation. You can read it from here. Roots USA, Blue Stem, True Religion, and it's very sad that a more than 100 years old organization called J.C. Penney has also gone belly up. And just yesterday, I noted down that Brooks Brothers, which is a very famous clothier, what they call themselves as couturiers. Couturiers are those who makes clothes for statesmen and so on, normally used for the female gender, but also used for male genders. They've in fact made the coats for 41 US presidents, and Abraham Lincoln is supposed to be a loyal customer who had also got a quote from them, which has the famous embroidered words, one country, one destiny, if I remember right. And that's the unfortunate quote in which he also got assassinated, but a legendary kind of an organization. So this slide is a bit scary also. It reminds us about, companies that have weathered, like Brooks Brothers, it's weathered two wars, World War I and World War II. It weathered the Great Depression. It weathered the great financial crisis, but not the pandemic. And now it's filed for bankruptcy. So there's so many companies now which are filing for bankruptcy and so on. And therefore, one has to also cherry pick and select the company that you're going to join, or select the company that you wish to join, even if it means a bit of waiting, very, very carefully. Very quickly, and I made very copious notes for you here, there are lots of accelerated adoptions which are happening thanks to trying to face trying to wage this war against the pandemic. There are wars in terms of, the war is in terms of finding thermal sensors, wars in terms of disaster management recoveries based on blockchain, helmet mounted thermal scanners. There's a whole lot of work being done in renewable power. MG Motors is tied up with Tata Power to set up the first electric vehicle fast charging stations, manufacturing and maintenance. 400 Indian garment manufacturers have ventured into PPE market during the last 2 months. Hero Motors and others have rolled out online platform. KEC has implemented digital platforms for inspecting its transmission towers. Aviation and hospitality has also seen a lot of change. If you look at the TV and look at the kind of stuff they've done in airports where they have contactless check-ins, security checks, pre-ordering of food, drinks via mobile menu, all kinds of things have been done. So the world has been much more innovative and has leveraged this opportunity. So the other lesson I'd like to leave behind with you is, this is a great opportunity to also think of new ways of doing the same thing and also bring in some freshness in your own life about how you can think of altering patterns which were set in the past. Just to continue on this, there are lots of areas in which this innovation has been done. It's a broad spectrum kind of innovation that has started, right from financial services, insurance, the employment sector, training and education sector. Now people are talking about learning management platforms and not just learning management systems. Learning management platforms are recommendatory platforms where you are actually recommended about what you read, what you should be studying in depth, and so on. There's the facilities sector has been growing, food delivery, e-commerce has been growing, brick and mortar retail. So lots of areas have been, I mean, today you don't pay your bhajiwala or sabjiwala by currency. I mean, nobody pays by currency, everybody pays through Google Pay or Paytm and so on. So there's been quite a revolution and quite a lot of changes that have been happening in the world as a response to the crisis. Just I'll go through the top line here in terms of the global downturn which is expected. Not very good. What is portended by the economists is a severe kind of a downturn globally in China and USA. And I don't know whether China's statistics are completely reliable, but from whatever we know, it's like this. But even the juggernaut like USA, which is really struggling with the pandemic, the growth is supposed to be anywhere between -8% and -4.6%. And whether it is oil prices, whether it is trade and transport, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is retail, F&B, there are lots of changes which have happened. For example, Microsoft in retail has announced it will be permanently shutting down the vast majority of its retail stores. Uh, on the other hand, in China, retail market is expected to overtake the US and becomes the world's largest in 2020. So the whole idea is, please, when you are going for interviews, please, when you're looking for jobs, etc., look at the statistics, look at the economics that's happening, the macroeconomic scenarios, and the economic environment of business. It's very important for you to be on top with the trends and so on, so that you make your choices well, so that you also know what you're getting into in this world, which is always full of surprises. I'll now shift from statistics to illustrations, because too much of statistics on a Saturday afternoon is difficult to digest. It's about 25 minutes into the call. I'll talk about the new norm. What is the new norm? The first new norm, and this is one of my oldest part of my train collection. You know, before the HO and OO scale trains started, there were clockwork driven trains that used to be in this world, and children used to play with these. This particular train that you see is about 70 years old, maybe 75, because those days they didn't have such self-finding and so on. So organizational orthodoxies is the old way of doing things. And I just told you about what happened with Brooks Brothers. Yesterday, the TV was screaming about Nokia. It's another company that is very, very close to being in big trouble. So organizational orthodoxies is sticking to the old way of doing things. And the new norm is that the old way of doing things could be as old as just 1 month back. So you need to dump it in case there's something that's become outdated and old, maybe as dramatic as just a few weeks back, because of the new way of looking at things. Look at the way that we are facing the pandemic also. Every day is a new day. We're learning new things every day. Therefore, it's important to look at how you can change gears very, very quickly. The new norm is about many things concerning the way of working. Of course, all of you have heard about work from home, and these illustrations tell you about it. Now, work from home is a very involved kind of a change in terms of our own leadership styles. Since the topic is about leading people in the new norm, the first and most important basis of allowing people to work from home is trust. And why are you doing this? Because it is expected that huge amounts of money will be saved because of real estate costs, because of electricity costs, water costs, food and beverage costs, and so on. But then every person who does work from home may not have the good fortune to have a large enough house or privacy to work from home without distracting the family and without getting distracted herself or himself. Therefore, there is a particular setting out here. This person out here in this illustration is working from the kitchen because maybe he or she is in a very small home. And in places like Mumbai and maybe other cities too, the tendency seems to be to go into studio apartments and so on, especially when you're starting life. But this is the new norm of how you are going to get the right balance between not overdoing it by looking over the shoulder of people who are working from home, and also not letting go of accountability. It's very important to make performance appraisals which are more outcome based rather than input based, because performance appraisals, doing it on a daily basis is going to be too overbearing, and check-ins doing it every day is going to be too overbearing. I know that IT companies have something called timesheets and so on, and it's possible to measure what people are doing. But it's very important to make sure that the employees concerned make a choice about whether they want to work from home or not. Our early information from many corporates is those who raise their hand for working from home after some time get fed up because their social capital is getting eroded, and they say, hey, I'm getting bored at home, I want to come back to work. So it's a very delicate balance. Some people feel very insecure about working from home because of out of sight, out of mind, what will happen to my promotions and so on. It's very important to also figure out what are the kind of job roles, very, very important. What are the kind of job roles where work from home is possible? So just because it's a gimmicky kind of panacea, which seems to be a panacea for all ills, one shouldn't rush into it. One should get into it in a phased manner. And leading people while working from home is a very, very challenging kind of a issue, because one has to be empathic and so on, and very sympathetic to what a pressure cooker going off and so on. Also, there is, I think as you go forward, gig working is going to become more common. People with shorter terms being included is a big issue for gig working. It's not so common in India. I've written a whole lot of articles on these. One is on butterflies, on which I think the professor was fascinated yesterday. Gig working doesn't mean flitting from one job to another. Gig working means short-term, fixed tenure employment. The Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act allows even workmen to be short-term, fixed tenure employment without companies getting into liabilities of retrenchment, compensation, and stuff. So I think that is going to become more common. But how do you manage gig workers coming into teams, going out of teams? How do you manage continuity? How do you make sure that they're enthused? How do you make sure that they're included is a very important part of the skill for leading people in the new norm. I think gig working is going to become very common because companies are looking at costs. Gig working is one way to keep the costs down. So they're not on your payroll. They come in whenever you require them, and they keep moving from one job to another, not because they want to change the job, but they're good at whatever they're doing. And they're available whenever you need them. There's also something called neo-gig working, which is about, you have some specialists who are off your payrolls, but they are permanently dedicated to your kind of requirements. And in neo-gig, they come in whenever you want. They're not free to take up other jobs and so on, but then they distribute their work in permissible areas so that they make their bread and butter and jam. Whereas you can take them off your payroll and therefore reduce your liabilities. Companies today are looking at costs very closely, not just during the pandemic period, but my prediction is for many weeks and months to come, companies are going to look at their costs very closely. So this new way of working and also the new way of leading, gig and neo-gig, is going to become very important. Fluid structures, organization structures are going to become very fluid, in the sense that in the old norm, you had fixed hierarchies, you had grades, you had matrix type of companies, which was the most adventurous in terms of reporting, but nothing more. I think in the new structures that we're going to see, you'll find people working in multiple projects, coming in and out of projects. You'll find people having SLA type of contracts, internal contracts with various teams, and they can move from one room to another, as you see these hexagons or these honeycomb kind of diagrams, where they move from one project to another or get into multiple projects, which is what a typical project matrixed organization looks like. And managing uncertainty, that is going to be a very important point when you're leading teams. I think it's no more fashionable to talk about the VUCA world. Just like today, we don't know about what is going to happen in terms of tomorrow. Where is the Mahamari going to show its ugly head? In which city, in what form, rural area, we just don't know. So I think we've all learned to live in the new norm with those uncertainties. Just be careful by wearing masks, visors, social distancing, and so on. So managing uncertainty is about business too, because we don't know about consumer trends and so on. And one has to be extremely agile in the new norm. And I think leading people to not moan and groan about the new norm or to be worrying about this uncertainty, but actually to celebrate uncertainty like a kind of an adventure, as long as you can get on top of it. It's like surfing very big waves in a violent sea. So I think that is extremely important. Credibility is going to be very important for your followers. Followers who are credible and leaders who are credible are going to be getting extra points with respect to that trust equation. One of the biggest important points when I'm communicating to you is you can't see me very well. You can't see my body language very well. You can only see my face. You can't see my hands also. Sometimes you see my hands. But it's difficult to figure out whether I'm credible or not just based on my digital presence with you. So credibility is extremely important, and building that is very important. And learning patterns, understanding what kind of learning patterns there are in the company. For example, today You have software like Adobe Connect, with which you can even find out about how engaged are the learners in a particular session. Blended learning with a good mix between physical contact classes and also learning online is going to be very important. Some of the experiential learning, and this is where the faculty needs to figure out and find out what are the methods. For example, doing field work, going out and finding out how the consumers are feeling cannot be substituted by digital. And it's very important for faculty to think of innovative ways. Second is, I must share that in many interviews, I find young MBAs, engineers saying, oh, you know, this, what you're asking me, I mean, they don't tell me because I'm the interviewer, but the body language says, you know, what you're asking me is too conceptual, it's too theoretical. I think this is a great time to go back to theory. It's a great time to focus on concepts. It's not a good time for you to just surf over the concepts and then go into something else. In-depth learning of the theory is very important in your years ahead. By the way, theory comes from the word theater, and theater means practice. So don't dismiss it as ye sab theory hai, mere liye nahi hai. It's very important for you to use this time to also get into patterns of serious learning, and therefore leaders can help their followers in doing that. And of course, the fungibility of talent. I think people are learning to be learning about doing multiple roles. It's very important to do multiple roles in today's context, because you may be an excellent person in accounts, but you should be also pretty good in HR if required. If you are good in HR, you should be pretty good in economic environment of business and in strategy. So learning how to do other roles also and mastering at least 2 to 3 roles is going to be very important. A portfolio portfolio means a bag full of competencies is more important than having a fixed set of competencies. So fungibility of talent is something very important for you to understand in the new norm. And needless to say, as you see my 2 trains, social distancing, extremely important. I don't know why people are, even today, when you look down into the streets and so on, people today also are thinking it's a little bit of a joke. It's extremely important for months, weeks, years ahead to look at new standards of hygiene. That's the new norm. And look at how you can make good the social capital that you may be missing because of the Zoom parties and because of the MS Teams parties. You may be missing out on real physical parties, but then that is more important for your life than getting sick. So it's very, very important to look at that particular aspect as we go forward. And in terms of these basics, which I'm talking about in the new norm, I think finding your own true north. You see the name of this train, it says Coco the North. That's the name of a British train. And finding your true north means not going by what the herd is saying, you know. There are many examples of successful people who have not done what the other classmates said is the best thing to do. This is a great time to find your own direction in life. It's a great time in any way, COVID or no COVID, to find out what is it that you love and you can learn most from, and that offers you the best in terms of showing your own potential. That is very, very important rather than following what the herd says. In my final section or semi-final section, I want to talk about behaviors, which are very important. Behaviors are very important in the new norm for leaders, and I would like to dwell upon a concept called servant leadership. Servant leadership, when you're leading people in the new norm, is focusing more on the follower and less on trying to be transformational or transactional. Transformational is an outcome of focusing much more on followers. Standing back is the habit of a leader. Standing back is the habit of a leader to stand back and let the followers take the credit. Rare it is these days that people would like their followers to take the credit, but good leaders in the new context must be able to do that. It's extremely important to give your followers who are going through very, very stressful times, they have engagement issues and so on, stand back, let them take the glory under the sun. Interpersonal acceptance. Please remember, when you're working from home, if you're dressing down, giving a dressing down to a follower, his wife may be hearing or her husband may be hearing, and it's not good. The family may be hearing what you're saying. So please respect the individual, extremely important. How you speak is even more important because it's not in your cabin anymore. It's at the world at large. Somebody could even be recording you like they're recording me right now. Courage. Courage is very important in times like this because a very, very close team member may be down with a problem, or maybe the market turns extremely adverse. You're planning to take risks. And it's very important for leaders in times like this to also take risks which are sensible, try new approaches to old problems, and which is essential for innovation and creativity. Many of these companies have not survived, maybe because of just basking in their old glory. So the courage to take risks is very important as a good leader in the new norm. Empowerment and trust. It's making your followers more self-confident. Imagine if you have followers who are confident about what they're doing. They will really flourish. Trust them, empower them with whatever you think they can do, because trust is an extremely important point in times like this. Empowerment means self-directed decision-making. Encourage your followers not to keep ringing you up in the middle of the night and saying, sir, what do I do now? Come on, take a decision, please do it. Maybe you make a mistake, doesn't matter. The heavens are not going to earth. Celebrate mistakes, learn from mistakes, extremely important. Accountability. While we talked about how timesheets, etc., can look a little bit jarring in times like this, it's very important for us to also have accountability. Outcome-based performance appraisals are very important. Holding people accountable means not just being in control of them as a boss, but giving them the control, asking them to take responsibility for their outcomes, extremely important. And the next is authenticity. I think it's very important for people, including leaders, to show their true self digitally. We've been having a number of ECOM, executive committee meetings, in which our managing director has been extremely open about the way he feels and so on. It's very important that leaders also show they are also human beings. So therefore, it's very important whether they feel lonely, whether they feel disgusted, whether they feel whatever it is. It's important to reflect your feelings with your followers. Remember, you become more acceptable. You have a close connect with your people, provided you show them how authentic you are. And being authentic is demonstrating your true thoughts, your true feelings, and people can read that quite easily, actually. This is an everlasting kind of a characteristic of servant leadership, which is humility. It's very important in times like this. For example, when I speak to one of the people who used to report to me now, it doesn't matter whether his drawing room is bigger than my drawing room. All you can see is my screen behind. You can't see the drawing room. So you can't see any of the artifacts like the size of the cabin and so on. And humility is very important because remember, in times like this where you, in spite of trying your best to look around corners, it's very difficult to find solutions easily. And therefore you need the collective wisdom of many to find the answers to many, many ticklish problems. And finally, the organizational stewardship. Organizational stewardship is the willingness to take responsibility for the larger institutions and go for service instead of control and self-interest. So now it's about close to 45 minutes before, after 4 o'clock, it's 4:45. And I think it's time for me to now allow the professors to ask me any questions that they have.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
So we'll start the conversation now. So questions are open. There are a couple of questions which is already there in question answer section. So I'll take that one by one. But before that, can you allow me, sir, to ask one or two questions from my side regarding the economy, and if you can explain a little more on that. Some of your work that you have done in the past, if you can explore, if you allow us to explore a little more into that.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would like to ask you is related to economy, and maybe our audience and attendees, the students would be interested in knowing People are talking about V-shaped recovery. People are talking about U-shaped recovery, and there is a lot of papers coming up around it. And even for the US economy, it was said that it's going to be a V-shaped economy recovery. And in many of the areas, we can see that the recovery is already started happening. In one of the conversation, our Prime Minister has also indicated that the world recovery of the economy will be dependent on how India is going to recover, because the days of decoupling that we were talking about is gone, and Indian economy, world economy is intricately related to how India is going to perform. And you have already said that the export is down and demand internationally is down. So, if I can give you some indicators of recovery which is around the corner, and if you can give your opinion about how recovery is going to happen. Is it going to be sectorally happening, or is it going to be a V-shaped quick recovery? How long is going to take? One of the indicator that I can see is the BSE index. If you look at BSE index, in 2019 is 40,000 plus, but today if you see yesterday's figure is 36,737, which is on the rise, and it's almost close to 40,000. So people are expecting that it will cross 40,000 very soon. That's number one. Second indicator, if you look at, is the gold price. Simultaneously, the gold price is climbing up, and is one of the highest, is like 49,054. Exchange rate is also, and the crude price going down. So there is a mixed scenario which is around us. So what is your opinion, sir, on recovery front? How soon the recovery is going to happen? Are we getting the signals of recovery sectorally already started, or it will take some time? What is your opinion, sir, on that?
My opinion is that being carried away by the stock market index is a bad idea. I think this 36,000 points that we're seeing right now is showing overvaluations of many stocks. I think we have to be extremely careful. If you please see the index, the way it has moved in the last 1 month, it has moved by something like 4,000 to 5,000 points in 1 month, which is too fast. I always have an issue in my mind. Maybe I'm a bit of an orthodox person. When things move too fast, I don't know whether I would go by that. I don't think I would go by gold prices and things. I showed you a slide which talked about the fundamentals of the economy. The fundamentals of the economy and the fundamentals of the economics of the world have been shaken up by the pandemic. It's not going to be the same anymore. I think it's going to take time to stabilize. I think it's neither V-shaped, neither U-shaped. It's going to be between a V and a U. It's going to take maybe a year and a half or two for us to even look at the glimmers of how we are going to be getting back to the new norm. I think those who have the strength, the inner strength to stand up and, stand up and weather the storm are the ones who are going to be really lasting out. So you need to have strength of mind. You need to have the kind of resilience. If I was a young MBA today, very frankly speaking, I wouldn't look at compensation alone. I wouldn't keep saying, मेरे senior batch में इतना मिला था उसको, इसलिए मुझे इतना मिलना चाहिए. I don't think that's the right way to look at it. I also don't think you need to feel small just because you're getting, say, a couple of percentage points lesser than what your colleagues got earlier. I don't think you need to feel small about that at all. I think what is important is selecting a sector which you like. Of course, we talked about pharma sector going up for obvious reasons. FMCG is doing well, including the Maricos, the Hindustan Unilevers, and the Gillettes and the other companies. They're all doing well. E-commerce obviously is doing well, but look at what is going to happen in the future. Some of the niche IT sectors are going to do extremely well. So take your pick according to, just like you'd buy a share. You won't go blindly into the share market and pick up every share that seems to be doing well. You won't pick up the nifty top 30 like that. You look at what is the potential, what is the management team like, what are the fundamentals like, what is it that is unique about this company. Let me give you a parallel with shares. You look at, let's say, a company like Nestle. They're almost in a monopoly situation with respect to baby food. So everybody knows that Nestle is going to be on top. They're not allowed to advertise baby foods because of some outdated law. They know that a close second is another pharmaceutical company, which is very, distant in being a close second. Same with Asian Paints. So like that, pick up companies which are absolutely on the top rung. This is not meant to be a pre-placement talk, but L&T is absolutely on tops in terms of project management of large projects, small projects, etc. Infrastructure sector, can you think of any other company? So pick companies for your career choice where you think there's going to be definite growth rather than going by, general trends. The general trends of stock market, etc., are not going to be telling you the absolute. They're sentiment driven. They're based on expectation and so on. And tomorrow's another day. So I would still go by the morose statistics which I showed with rational optimism looking at the future.
Absolutely. Sir, may I also present some view, like, in economic times, sometime back, somebody has written about it, and the article actually talked about the kind of job posting that was done on LinkedIn during the pandemic, the lockdown period. And they suggested that there's more than 200,000 job postings were done, and they were actually interviewed. They also interviewed a lot of top HRs, including the Deloitte and others. And what the HRs actually said was that there is a subtle, difference. You have to understand that the general job scenario in the economy, when we are talking about non-formal economy and others, there is going to be a lot of, it will take a long time to recover. But if you look at the MBA and the fresh MBAs, and most of these 200,000 jobs which were actually posted by different companies, and there is a list of companies who posted the job on LinkedIn during lockdown. The freshers, a lot of jobs were for the freshers. So when you talk about the job market for the MBA, how is going to recover, and job in general, like, people who are in informal sector and other sectors of the economy, of course, that will take some time. But most of the HR said that, the recovery is going to be like V-shaped, because, it's going to be a little faster, quicker for the MBAs, especially because the job clarity will evolve much more in the post-pandemic period. And the companies with the clear job clarity about the offerings, they will not stop hiring. For example, even the Grofers, the Big Basket, Deloitte actually hired during the pandemic. And Jaipuria record, if you look at Jaipuria record as an example, as a minuscule example, we have been able to place a lot of people in 8 lakhs, 7 lakhs, 10 lakhs during the pandemic period also. So, can we have your opinion on this idea, so that, our new freshers MBA who are trying to join our college will have a fair idea about, how the job market is going to fare, and they are not bogged down too much by the fact that the employment scenario is going to be bad in the economy in general.
See, the good news is that the job market is the job market for everybody. It's not only for Jaipuria Institute students, it's the same for everybody. The good news. The fact is that MBAs, in order to make themselves really marketable, irrespective of whether there are lots of jobs in LinkedIn or lesser jobs in LinkedIn, I think it's very important to position yourself very, very differently in today's market. First thing is develop a digital persona. I think there are some people who are role models in terms of how they come off, including TV newscasters and so on. Some of them are outstanding, the way they speak, the way they modulate their voice. Many of the young people today must realize that when you're interviewed digitally, the way you come off is very important. Your voice being too weak or too feeble, etc., is going to really put people off. Second is, be very, very clear that the zamana which Yogi Sriram went through, which was many, many years back, where the dream was, a middle-class dream of a person working in a public sector was buying a DDA flat and buying a Maruti 800 car, is gone. Now jobs will last only if you are learning constantly. Learning is the new mantra, which means learning a new skill and so on. I'm very sorry to say that if you look at some of the MBAs of past batches, and I can't say about the current batch, many of them in the first 1 year, if you look at the probability of the number of people who have just not read a book, large number, put on weight, large number, not gone into details of what are the next course I can do, large number. So complacency can be a big enemy. Second, I think it's very important for MBAs to realize that just learning a few terms about strategy and learning about marketing and Philip Kotler and learning a few theories, which are very, very important, is not enough for bridging the gap, which is in terms of your cultural capital, in terms of your social capital. In today's times, in these very challenging times, how you reach out to people is extremely important. How pleasing you are as a personality in terms of influencing people is extremely important. So therefore, these are new competencies and new skills which were not existing earlier. So just, you know, riding the crest of success based on an admission into an MBA college is not enough. And of course, I'm equally optimistic, and I think one day or the other the vaccination will be found. I think the economy is going to really get unbottled and do extremely well. But I would approach it with a sense of great caution. I would also not be limited by stereotypes. And I'm not, again, I'm saying that this is not a PPT, pre-placement talk. So therefore, I'm not talking about only my company, but people are so shy about getting into the manufacturing sector. How many MBAs say, okay, I'm going to go and work on the shop floor. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and work on the shop floor. Please do that. That's extremely important. Please look at the profile of all the top leaders in the world. They've worked on the shop floor. They've worked in projects. So these old mindsets should be broken off. And while one is optimistic, cautious optimism is important. And positioning yourself in the class as who's different. Be an interesting person, no? I mean, people today even in digital, holding attention for a person for more than 10 minutes is a task. It's not easy. So be an interesting person. Tell people about what you have, which other people don't have. That's extremely important. And for that, you need to carefully cultivate the skills.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right in saying that it's not about being optimistic or pessimistic. Even in the past, if you look at when the economy was doing good, there were people who were not getting good jobs. So, this is going to happen. It depends on how you groom yourself. That's the first key that all of us have to learn.
And
today's takeaway.
the other thing is, and sorry to interrupt, the other thing is, while, earlier in campuses and all that, I heard sounds of celebration once a person got a campus offer. People would say, woo, and give me a treat and all that stuff. While one can continue feeling extremely good about it, I think one should realize that a job is not forever anymore. Employers are looking at employees very, very, very carefully in the new norm. And therefore, there is no free lunch. Every day is a new day. Now, I'm not trying to make people insecure, but I'm just trying to say, being on the toes and not getting complacent is very important. Earlier, the people could get complacent and they could just coast along, coast along because you got into the job, your passport is an MBA. As long as you're doing okay, it's fine. Today, getting into the job is only buying a ticket into the first entry point of where you need to perform. That's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Having said that, I would also like to take one question, which is very related to what you have spoken. You talked about gig economy, and in your very celebrated write-up on butterflies, which you did in 2018, I'm quoting from that. And in light of this, I'll take that question from Shant Gupta asked this question. So I'll take that. You said that, you have written in that paper, while a written contract will, govern the hard aspects of the relationship in gig economy, how will a psychological contract in a gig economy operate? And Shant Gupta is asking, with gig economy, how the R&D is going to be impacted. So what is this psychological makeup in the gig economy that we should, as a student or as a faculty, we should be, be cautious about?
The mindset of most Indians is they identify themselves by the job first compared to anything else. I also love to introduce myself as Yogi Sriram with my visiting card given from Larsen Toubro. I'm very proud of my company. So defining yourself and your identity through a job, through the company you work for, is a very important Indian value. I think that will have to undergo some change. I'm not saying be any less loyal, be as professional as possible. But I think one has to now look at loyalty to the profession rather than just the company, and also defining yourself through the profession and not just the company. Loyalty is very important for both, but defining yourself, defining who you are, your identity, your persona. Yogi Sriram of HR. When you take my name, I should be associated with HR. Like that, 6-7 years down the line, after a person has passed out of an MBA or joined an MBA, if the person stands up in a seminar and makes a point, what is the word association? Is it something like working out a particular model in finance, or working out a particular model in e-retailing? Or what is it? What is it that that person is really known for is very important. It's a bit of a delicate point, but I want to also point out, for the first time in many, many years, the WHO Director General is a person who's a non-medical doctor. I leave it to your imagination about the controversies that are happening in the world about a non-medical doctor commenting on a disease and commenting on the strategies to manage the disease. So therefore, domain is king. It's very important to be absorbing all the time new knowledge and becoming an expert in that. That's very important. You can't be, I'm a little allergic to the word generalist. I don't like it. So when somebody tells me in an interview, I want to be a generalist, I say, what does that mean? What does that mean? So generalist is too general in today's world. You need to be specific.
Sir, Vishal Mangwani has an interesting question to ask to you. He's saying that as nowadays many uncertain things are happening, and so most of the time our mind is full of those things which stops us to focus on important things. So in your opinion, how we can increase our focus strength and should be serious about our career?
3-4 things. One is that there is a whole field called positive psychology, and positive psychology is all about your inner attitude of wanting to flourish, wanting to be resilient. I'll tell you my secret sauce. I take each day as it comes. Nowadays, I take each day as it comes. I look at each day as little chunks with projects in it. I need to do my yoga in the mornings. That's a project. I need to have my breakfast. Even that's a project. I need to have a bath, even that's a project. So look at every little activity seriously and do that well. And anything in your body or mind which says, not now, I'll postpone it, especially things like exercise, physical fitness, which I think Aditya talked about, and he's very, very conscious about that. I'm reasonably conscious of it also. So anything that can be postponed, which is a very, very clear symbol of weak emotional quotient. I think one is to gather that willpower and say, abhi karenge. So that's very important to, get out of this trishanku of thinking all the time of kya hoga life mein, kya hoga zindagi mein, and the worry. You get out of the worry by snapping out of it and doing what is here and now good for you to do. Go for a jog, read a book, do whatever is necessary, set yourself a target and overcome that. That gives you confidence to do the next thing.
In one of your paper, it is in this context, in one of your paper in 2018, which you have written on the next wave of leadership excellence, you said that many times we have ideas which we do not want to let go. And then you talked about killing your darlings. So can you also, add this aspect to explain what the previous, question was, and then what kind of killings that we should do?
See, killing your darling means you have certain beliefs and you want it to come true. So if you're getting blinded, for example, if you're blinded by the fact that Diwali ke pehle vaccination jo hai ho jayega duniya mein, who knows? Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But being blinded by some kind of a belief is wrong in today's time. I think one has to have an open mind and say, okay, if it happens, it's great, but let's plan as much as we can. Now, the problem with having your favorite darling thoughts is that you have a lot of unintended biases. You may end up in doing things which, just because your belief says you want it to come true, it takes you in a very wrong direction. Therefore, it's much more important to be absolutely realistic and soak in as much information and knowledge as you can, and take the right kind of decision and make your judgment based on that. But nurturing your beliefs and wanting it to come true can blindly lead you into a wrong alley. That's what it means.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. There's an interesting question Harsita is asking, Harsita Singh. She's asking, I would like to know whether we should maintain few good connections that would be valuable, or should we be more efficient in connecting to a large group? This looks like a naive question, but it calls for your attention, sir.
No, it's not at all a naive question. It's a terrific question, and thank you for asking that. It's a very, very good question.
Yeah.
It's a very profound question.
Mm.
I think it depends on the topic. If you want to be innovative about something, today it's many to many. Crowdsourcing is many people to many. So if you have a team of people, say 5 or 6, and you want to get impressions and ideas and what are people doing in certain circumstances, you can get ideas from many people around, and you can actually put those ideas and implement them into action. But if you want to have a few friends on whom you can lean upon and share your innermost thoughts and stuff, have just a few. Having too many of those with whom you can share your innermost thoughts and your dilemmas, etc., is not a great idea. But if it's innovation, if it's something to do with getting crowdsourcing for an idea, if it's something to do with developing or getting a sense of how will this work, then contacts with many will work much better. Take my profession, for example. When this whole lockdown happened, I rang up a number of people and asked them about work from home. So they gave me lots of ideas about what their company is doing, their dilemmas, whether they're doing it for certain roles. But I wouldn't go to all of them and ask them about what I should do next year onwards. Next year onwards, if I'm exploring certain paths in my career, I'm not going to ask them everybody about that. So it just depends whom you're approaching what. I'll approach many for big ideas and so on, which are public, which you don't want to protect through safeguards or like patents and things. I would approach a few for something that's personal.
Yeah. So here's a question from Susmita Rathore, sir. And she's writing, you mentioned two things. One, going back to theories, which would mean learning again what is being there all along. And second, finding true north. That would mean going out of the norm, trying new things to find the right ways for present scenario. So how would you advise us to balance between the two?
No, they're not related. Learning about your concepts and theories is, do you pay attention in class? For example, if a cost of capital session is going on in finance, or let's say you're being taught risk management and you're being taught about the Monte Carlo theory, don't dismiss it as saying, wo to sab theory hai, calculus hai, pata nahi hum use karenge ki nahi, class mein, ya use karenge ki nahi zindagi mein. No. It may be something that may look very conceptual and theoretical to you, but it will be very, very useful to you in your real life, and you can have an edge over others if you can master that. So that's the first part of theory. Second is, in the digital world, when you have much lesser distractions, you can go through the theory much more seriously. Third point is, if you're stuck because the professor has tried to explain it, but you're still not, let's say NPTEL videos, you're going through it, you're still stuck, you can't understand a concept, you can go through YouTubes. There are plenty of them available today. You can do it privately without being judged whether you're a slow learner or a quick learner or whatever. So going into theory and what we call in college as fundas is extremely important. True north is not being carried away by what other people are saying, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters. Find your own compass. Have on your right hand or left hand your watch, on the other hand you have your compass. So find out which disha you would like to take in life, because your heart and mind is in that particular area. That is very important, because in today's context, being passionate about what you're doing is very important. In my generation, to be perfectly truthful to you, one could be carried away by the herd. One did MBAs and stuff in those days, whether you liked it or not, because it gave you a good job, right? In today's context, you have a choice. Those jobs have not shrunk. The professor himself, Prabhat Pankaj, has just now talked about how the LinkedIn jobs have actually gone up, unlike in the times when I grew up. So you have a whole bouquet of jobs available. Make your choice so that you're passionate about a particular profession.
Sir, in this context, would you also care to explain a little bit to our young attendees, at least, what did you mean by when you said that there is 10,000 feet vision for the leadership, there is 100 feet vision for the leadership, and there is a model 10 feet vision for the leadership? So how our young listeners can relate to this concept and learn from it? What are these?
See, one of the things that I've seen about leaders is the ability to go macro and also micro. And that is my own boss in the past, Mr. A.M. Naik, who's the chairman of Larsen Toubro. I mean, the ability to zoom in and know about, right from a flight timetable, about which are the flights leaving Bombay in the next 1 hour or next 2 hours going to Delhi. And knowing more accurately than the travel department, or knowing about which planes are going to Germany in the next 2-3 days. Right from that to, say, summarizing a conversation where there are, hedging of currencies involved, where there are fluctuating currencies involved, where the geopolitical scenario of the country is involved, where the status of that particular business is fluid. Putting together, say, 10 or 12 factors of business together and looking at it from a very strategic point of view. So both the capabilities are very important. Going micro, going into detail. I hope people won't mind on this call, but sometimes what happens is when you do your MBA, you think you can become very general and become very macro, and you just skim over the surface. Devil is in the detail. So if you're doing something, do it in absolute detail and have the pride that nobody can pick even a small word which you've not gone through it. So whether it's a presentation or whether it is presenting an idea or whether it is making a proposal, detail is extremely important. So that's 10 feet. And macro is, of course, when you can look at the bigger picture.
So there's a lot of interest in understanding about what is going to happen to different sectors in the post-COVID time. And our attendees are also asking a lot of questions about it. One of the questions is related to automobile sector. So Krunal Pandya is asking, what is your take on automobile sectors? How is that going to be shaped looking at social distance following that will be a push to automobile sector or something like that? I'm not very clear here. Also,
I'm trying to answer
like
that.
you mentioned, let me just read out his next line, sir, for you. Also, like you mentioned, it's really important to be on shop floor. I worked with Polycab as a maintenance and project engineer. How you feel that O&M is going to be doing in near future?
So the first part first. Today, they say that Tesla has overtaken Toyota in terms of the number of cars produced, and the demand for electric vehicles is high. So the trend basically is definitely towards electric vehicles and renewable energy. Second is that with social distancing and so on becoming a reality, it is expected that smaller cars for travel will become more common. People may, if they can afford it, try to avoid public transport and take smaller cars. So I feel optimistic about the automobile sector. In terms of social distancing and so on, there are norms now that you can't do a carpool, especially during the pandemic with 4 or 5 people in the car. You need to have one driver and then behind you have another person and so on. There are specific protocols for that. So there'll be lesser people traveling in the car. But that is not going to be forever. I think I feel very optimistic about the automobile sector in times to come. Gentleman concerned talked about Polycab, and Polycab is a very interesting company which makes electrical cables of different types. I use it in my hobby, actually, some of them. They make very high quality copper cables and other cables. And I think it's a great company to work for. I mean, if you're working on the shop floor and learning about how are cables extruded, for example, how are cables made, it's a lifetime experience. Second is, I must tell you that the interpersonal dynamics in a shop floor or a manufacturing shop floor is very different from an office. It's very different from an AC office. I think you come to know the real pulse of the organization in the manufacturing shop floor.
Another sector the student would be interested in knowing is retail. There are a couple of questions that students have asked. Given the scenario that if I look at how Jaipuria students have fared in the post-COVID and COVID time in as far as retail is concerned, we have this example, very unique example of Uniqlo, which has provided internship in Japan to our students, and they have already started the onboarding. Aditya Birla Fashion have started virtual joining for our students. Metro Cash and Carry, they have promoted our student actually in these times. So, there are some good news coming from retail as well. So what is going to be the outlook as per in your view, and how the job is going to return back in a big way in retail? What do you think about it?
So I apologize for showing some very depressing news about the retail sector, especially in the international context. All the examples of bankruptcies, whether it's JCPenney or whether it is the Brooks Brothers, etc., happens to be in the retail sector. I think this is a shakeout that's happening. Retail sector is not going to disappear. It's a no-brainer that it's going to be converted to e-retail. There are some very innovative companies which are able to promote not only touch and feel, but also smell through of perfumes and things for retail sector. I think the world is going to see a lot of innovation in that particular sector to go through an experience. For example, I'm dreaming that one day I walk into an apparel shop and I don't have to go into a trial room. I just go into my own bedroom and I try out that coat with a particular dimension, and it just comes on my body, and I can look at myself in a digital mirror. I don't think that's very far away. So I think the innovations in retail is going to be huge so that people maintain all the hygiene and stuff. Supply chain, I think in retail is going to be very, very big as an opportunity. And I would compete with the knowledge and skills of people from NITI, for example, in my mathematics, in my quantitative skills. This is a message also to the faculty of Jaipuria that please focus a lot in supply chain with respect to not only qualitative, but the quantitative part. There are many, many algorithms where you can use, where do I source from? What is the best way to source? What is the quality I can get? I think training the young MBAs in those areas with a lot of mathematics and mathematical models is going to be very, very interesting for positioning Jaipuria differently as compared to other management institutes.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. Sarang is asking because there's a lot of concern about about their personal learning and all. So in this context, if you can guide them a bit, he's saying that I'm from engineering background and it is quite difficult for students to understand the economics from engineering background. So how can I gain the knowledge about the economics?
So what I've done in my school and college with difficult subjects is I have first of all latched on to something that is interesting for me in that. There could be some questions in that subject which are fascinating for you, even if it's very simple. I mean, supposing there's something in economics is called indifference curves. Now, how can people be indifferent to salt and sugar at the same time? Read up on what is indifference curve, first of all. What is the psychology of consumer behavior? And why should economists be obsessed about how people are indifferent to something or are different to something? What is demand and supply and so on? So in economics, pick up a topic which is fascinating. For example, Google and find the dollar. Find out why is the dollar 75 rupees? I don't know. Ask yourself, koi bata sakta hai mujhe, why is the dollar 75 rupees? Then go into studying it. Answer will come. There's something called international basket of currencies. Answer will come that there is a question of demand and supply for the currency. Answer will come from what are the reserves that country has. That will make it very fascinating. So start with questions. Put something simple in front of you and start with asking a question, why is this dollar 75 rupees? And why does the Middle East dirham doesn't fluctuate beyond 3.75 the rupees a dirham? Sorry, 3.75 rupees a dirham. or is it dollars? Maybe I don't know. No. It is 3.75 dirhams making a dollar. Correction, 3.75 dirhams making a dollar. Why is it so stable? How come the currency sticks to not fluctuating much? Study that. So ask very, very simple 101 questions, and then you'll get more and more absorbed into it.
So related to this, there is another question, but I don't see the name of the student who has written it, but
No
I
problem.
read out the question.
Yeah, please do.
Is writing, earlier you mentioned there are students who don't even read books and are MBAs. What kind of books would you suggest for us to increase our knowledge of the industry as well as personal development? Can you suggest a couple of books to them?
Yeah, most certainly. I think the authors called Kahneman and Tversky, who write about thinking fast, thinking slow, of thinking fast, thinking slow. I don't remember the exact title. It's a very, very good book. The authors at Kahneman and Tversky, what they write in terms of project management, in terms of optimism, bias, etc., is very, very interesting. I would recommend that. I also think from the psychology point of view, the author of the book Blink, Gladwell, I think, who's written many other books on mindsets and biases and so on, would be interesting. Pick up some books which you can read and discuss. And I think distribute the books between something on social psychology. So Malcolm Gladwell, if I remember right, who's written Blink, is a good idea. Second is something on economics, which allows you to discuss what are current trends, why is it that currencies fluctuate and so on, would be interesting. For example, sometime back, you don't need to read books all the time, by the way. There are also good articles. Economist is an excellent place to start. Arvind Subramaniam talked a lot some time back about the demographic dividend. Pick that up, discuss it and so on. So you don't have to stick only to books, look at articles and so on. Second is, some people find it very difficult to go through a full book. Don't worry, pick up the 7th chapter, pick up the 8th chapter, pick up the 9th chapter, read it ulta also, doesn't matter. So don't get discouraged by where to start, and even if you get bored, if your attention span is... Third point is, you can always read 3 books at one time. Not at the same time, but at one time. So you can have a book there, put a small bookmark on it, read a chapter, go into another book, read something else there. No one is going to judge you whether you're surfing through a number of books. Make it interesting, not a drudgery.
So on books, you may have your own takes, or you're a good reader and you must have read number of books. Would it be possible for you, sir, if you can send us 10-20 list of your top choice of books, which our students can actually take a look at, and we will share that with the students. There is yet another question I would like to just change a little bit from books and learning to...
I just want to give one warning of the Surgeon General. My biases towards books may be in a particular area, but if there's a girl or a boy who's very interested, let's say, in history, or somebody may be very interested in war strategies, please go ahead and read that. There's a lot to learn from them also. I may not be interested in that, but that doesn't mean that you limit your reading to only my reading. Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Reading is very important. Now I'm changing a little bit to the trade field. There are some questions are asked over there, and I would also like to add my question to you, which I would like to ask you with this question asked by Subhi Tripathi is asking. I want to ask about the effect of Hong Kong security law on international trade, and in this context, if I can add my question to you, do you think that the news about China companies that largely the manufacturing companies shifting from China base to Vietnam and India, is that going to be a reality? What is your take on that? Is that going to affect the Indian economy and help the economy to gain international foothold in coming future? Is that a reality or is just a myth?
Yeah. So I think I showed in the slide set which I was trying to show one particular slide which had something to do with China. Let me try to pull that up for a second if I can. Anyway, what I was trying to show in that particular slide is that the China-USA trade war which started some time back. And to add to that, the big kind of a negative feelings about that country have compounded the problems for China in terms of freely offering their services and goods to many countries. It is no doubt that many countries are dependent on Chinese goods, and I made that point, for their own exports. That means if India has to export, a large component of whatever I export is also got components which I buy from China. Having said that, I think the sanctions that have come directly and indirectly, the protests that have come directly and indirectly, cannot really leave China absolutely undisturbed. They are disturbed about it because it is something which is threatening their bread and butter. And if schemes like Make in India can make us much more self-reliant, which is what the government is trying to do, then we'll depend less and less on Chinese goods. But that'll take some time. So I think the world has started moving, and I showed in that slide that to a period where the dependency on Chinese goods is going to reduce, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's also not the best of ideas, in my view, to be antagonistic and try to dump things all of a sudden like a reaction. I think it's important to have a graded kind of a shift to be much more self-reliant. The manufacturing sector, as far as India is concerned, has a huge kind of potential. Many countries, including USA, I think, are going to go more and more into manufacturing sector. There are some countries like in Europe, which have already shifted operations from China to their respective countries because they find that, you know, it is now possible for getting labor, etc., at a competitive price. Why was China the favorite darling for all this? Because of the cost advantage, because the cost of labor, etc., was reasonable. Now, I think the world is realizing that not only can you produce yourself, because a lot of the production is not anymore a hammer and a spanner and stuff. It's very digital and stuff. It's possible to create hubs of manufacturing in your own countries. So my prediction is that there'll be a cathexis of activity away from China, not dramatically, but gradually.
And that is going to help India in a big way.
It is definitely going to help India in a big way, provided we are able to snatch the advantage. Unfortunately, so far, Vietnam has snatched that advantage. Taiwan has snatched that advantage. Where have we snatched that advantage? We have not snatched that advantage. We've been absolutely shoddy in terms of our quality as compared to many of these countries. If you look at electronic goods, I recently bought a Nikon lens. It's made in China. I bought another camera. It is made in Taiwan. But where do you find cameras made in India? I'm dreaming of a day when they say made in India is top quality. We need to work for that.
We are approaching time, sir, so we have to wind it up. But I'll take just two last questions for you. And these are related to their learning. That's why I'm taking this question, because these questions are important and they would like you to answer this question. One is Rishabh Bum is asking, I have done hotel management and having 2 years learned experience in cruise ship company. I'm away from studies from last 7 years. What advice would you give to concentrate on the studies in this scenario for him?
Leverage on your hotel management. I think, I don't know whether you're an F&B guy or a front office guy or a housekeeping guy or whatever it is. But I think the detail that hotel management teaches you is something that other parts of the industry can really benchmark on. For example, if you're talking about real B2C, a housekeeper's detail is amazing. The ability for a housekeeper to understand consumer trends is amazing. For example, I know that some housekeepers, after the customer is checked out, looks at the dustbin because you can make out what kind of beer that particular customer has drunk, so that the next time the person comes back, you place that cold beer, that make, whatever make it is, out there next to the bed, so that the person says, wow, I don't know who knew that I love this beer. That is customer delight. I think the hotel industry comes to the ultimate experience of how a consumer feels, and you can leverage that teaching which you had in the IHM or Foodcraft Institute or wherever you did your course for translating it into real business ideas. Let me tell you, many times even MBAs who are seasoned miss out what the consumer experiences. And even FMCGs, if you ask me, would learn to value what the hotelier values, whether it's a front office person, whether it's a concierge using a clé d'ors on the coat, the two keys, or whether it is or whether it's an F&B person. F&B today, for example, is rocking. In my own place where I stay, I'm staying in Parel, I'm staying on the 49th floor of a particular building. 10 floors below the 49 floors are 10 parking. So effectively we are 59 floors off the ground. In my own buildings, the number of chefs who started, their own little kitchens and small entrepreneurship. So there's a lot to learn from F&B also. New tastes are emerging, fusion food, all kinds of stuff. And this is a great time when people are confined to home to using ideas of F&B for promoting other kind of facets of life also.
Thank you, sir. Our time is almost there, so I have to wind it up. I would have loved to ask many questions which our students have asked. We may like to send you these questions, and if you can give some specific suggestions to our student, we'll be very glad to do that. I'll just summarize in 30 seconds, try to summarize in 30 seconds the wonderful talk that you have given. So I'm just summarizing it in terms of the takeaway that I have thought that I'll be taking personally, and that may be important for all the listeners today. There are 5 points that I would like to mention to all of them. The summary, as a summary of the talk that you have given, it's a wonderful talk that you have given. The first learning from this session is to talk about the importance to keep up with the trends. It's very important that all of us should keep up with the trends. For our students, the import of this idea is that you should keep reading newspaper, Economic Times, Financial Express, and you should learn to deal with the data. That's very important. So get hold of the data and read books and play with the data, and also learn how to make meaning out of the data that you look at. That's number one import of your session. Number two, I would like to talk about is that you said that change your perception about jobs and sectors. It's not just about the first job that you get, it's about the career that you are looking at in the next 5 years. And the moment you start changing your perception from now to next 5 years, what is going to happen in your life in next 5 years, you become a pretty optimistic, and you can see that everything started coming to you. And you have to have the open mindset to change your perceptions, change your views, change your ways, and earn new competencies. That's the third point that I would like to make. You have to learn new ways of thinking about the old things. So, there are a lot of things that is changing. That's what you said. Old can be as old as yesterday. So you have to be very agile in your thought process. That's what the third point I would like to make. Fourth is learning pattern. You have to understand, and you have to change those learning patterns. It cannot be the conventional way of learning. Learning is extremely important, and in present circumstances, learning is more important than ever before. So you have to adopt that blended form. You have to go for new learning. You have to have a portfolio of competencies. These are the things that you have to look at. How as much learning, as much competency you add is going to be better for you. The last the take home for your session would be finding your true north. And that's very important. It's very close to my heart as well, sir. When you talked about the sense of service, you talked about the service leadership, servant leadership, talked about the highest form of leadership. This actually signifies the highest form of leadership. I remember Kabir, who is my favorite poet, he said that das banna kathin hai, मैं दासन का दास, अब तो ऐसा होई रहूं पांव तले की घास. No, this is very important to be service oriented, and the early our students learn to become service oriented is better for them, because that's how the whole world is looking at each one of us. We have to be like that. Finally, as my final note, to give a sense of optimism to all my young friends who are listening today, and it also comes from the essence of what you have spoken. I would again quote Kabir, my favorite. He said that, "जैसे तिल में तेल है, ज्यों चकमक में आग, तेरा साईं तुझ में है, तू जाग सके तो जाग." It's all within you. You have to come forward and take it. The moment you start transforming yourself, the world around you starts transforming. And in one of the two-line verses, I don't remember the name of the poet, he said that, "परों को खोल, ज़माना उड़ान देखता है, ज़मीं पर बैठकर क्यों आसमान देखता है." You have to come out and be a part of the change. So thank you so much, sir. And it was wonderful listening to you.
Also, Dr. Pankaj, for people to be interesting. And if you're interested, I'd like to show a little picture of what I do in terms of my hobby.
Yes, sir. We just missed it out.
Just to connect with what Aditya Ghosh said, being versatile is very important. Being an interesting person is important. He talked about a person knowing how to play the piano and being a scientist at the same time. In my own life, I've tried to be as versatile as possible. So I just wanted to take my colleagues, young colleagues, and all of you through this little video which I had shot some time back. This is a video of one of my trains, and one train is shooting another train. So it's a combination of my attempted skills in photography and also my train collection. I have converted this particular locomotive from analog to digital, and this entire layout which you're seeing is actually shot by a camera which is moving on another train which is moving in front. So I thought I'll do something Bollywood style.
And sir, this is what you created at your home. It's a prototype you have created there.
Yeah. So this is 1:76 in terms of scale. And everything that you see in this particular picture is actually, if you explode it 76 times, it's the real train, including the headlights. Now the headlight size is 1/10 of the size of a rice grain. So I have to find the negative and the positive on the LED. It's LED 603. Those who want to Google it and try to solder it, it's quite a task. So I have to use a magnifying glass and stuff, and it's very painstaking. And someone asked about worrying about the future. I think one of the good things one can do is to make some productive use of this time and do something where you can create something new. It gives you much more self-confidence.
Amazing, sir.
Okay, so that's just a glimpse of what I do. Should I stop sharing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much
for your talk. Wonderful talk. May I request Suresh ji to display the certificate that we would like to offer to you, sir, as token of our appreciation. This is a tree has been planted in your name in the Elephant Reserve in Singhbhum, Jharkhand, India. And these trees are planted to provide flowers, fruits, fodder, and fuel to rural communities and living creatures and improve water catchment areas. It's part of our green initiative.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end to this exciting and thought-provoking session. I'll leave you with this note, and please join us in the next series, in this series, the third one in the Change Maker series, on 15th July at 4 p.m. This is going to be Anand Nilkatan. He's an author, columnist, screenwriter, television personality, and a movie and a motivational speaker. He'll be speaking on leadership lessons through Indian mythology. Don't forget to join on 15th July at 4 p.m. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining.
Have a nice weekend, all of you, and be safe and be healthy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Surajji. Should I leave now?
Yes, sir, please. I'm ending the session.